We're back live with you tonight on In Focus, and thanks for staying on. According to Statistics South Africa data released today, inflation edged higher to 7.6% in October from 7.5% in September. Rising transport and food prices pushed way above the Reserve Bank's target band of between 3 and 6%. Transport prices saw an annual increase of 17.1%, while fuel prices shot up 30.1% compared with October last year. Joining us now to share his perspective on the impact of rising inflation on food, which now costs more than 12% more, is Andy du Plessis, Managing Director of FoodForward South Africa. Andy, good evening. Good to have you once again. Thank you very much for your time. The picture that is beginning to emerge, is it going to get worse before it gets better, or is this the worst of what we are going to see as far as inflation is concerned?
Hi, Tabo. Thank you very much for having us. Our view is that it's going to get worse. The Reserve Bank has warned that there are more interest rate hikes on the way, and we'll hear tomorrow what the verdict is. Most economists are talking about between 75% and 100 basis points increase. And the Reserve Bank has warned that there will be further increases to make sure that we stay within the 3 to 6%, that we get to go back towards the 3 to 6% band. And what that is doing is it's just worsening the cost of living crisis. Just this week on Monday, when I was checking emails early in the morning, I got an email from a mother, and she reached out to me and said that I'm not working, my husband's working, I've got 3 children, and my husband's money doesn't last for more than 2 weeks. We need help. Last week I got a similar email from a family that needed food. And we are, as an organization, FoodForward SA is becoming inundated like never before from applications from beneficiary organizations needing food, because on the ground, communities are starving and people are needing food. So what we are finding, Tabo, is that post the COVID crisis, as we're still entering into and working inside of a slow economy and huge amounts of joblessness, and there's just no jobs around. More and more people don't have enough money to see them through for a full month. So this is people that we're talking about that earn a daily wage, a weekly wage. They just don't earn enough money to see them through. And these are not, we're not even talking about people where there are no jobs at all. Children are dying of malnutrition. 50% of our child deaths in hospitals is attributed to malnutrition. So we know for a fact that food security is not being achieved in the short to medium term, and we are fearful that there's just not much that organizations can do to mitigate against the rising cost of living crisis that's unfolding.
Yeah. Is there something that can be done on the fiscal side, some constraints that could help us here?
Absolutely, Tabo. So one of the things that FoodForward SA launched a month ago was a petition for a food donations policy. And what that policy will allow is a few things. The first is it will allow for a framework of how food safety regulations can be kept in place to make sure that food safety is adhered to when donating food, surplus food donations. That liability protection is allowed for manufacturers and those that are donating food, and that government provides tax incentives for organizations or manufacturers donating food, as well as non-profit organizations whose infrastructure will have to grow and scale up once that food is unlocked. So there is low-hanging fruit, and we hope that our food donations policy will gain momentum across South Africa, and that portfolio committees will discuss this and hopefully end up in Parliament for discussion, so that we are able to make sure that while purchasing food is out of the question, because around 30 million people are food insecure for at least 1 or 2 weeks of every single month, moderate to severe food insecurity, we want to make sure that at least over the short to medium term that we are able to garner enough food and recover food and intercept food from the supply chain, so that we are able to make sure that people get fed, so that we have a healthier nation than we do now.
Yeah. Government support continuing to be quite key here, I see. But, I mean, as you mentioned, we are likely going to hear of the exchange rate, rather interest rates going up. Can government help us there? Would a different kind of regime in terms of policy on interest rate assist us?
I don't think so. I think the Reserve Bank has a particular mandate, and their mandate is to make sure that we remain within the 3 to 6% band. And our Reserve Bank follows very much what's happening in the U.S., the Federal Reserve, and they've been hiking interest rates all year this year. South Africa's had 7 interest rate hikes over the past year since the end of 2021, and Kganyago has warned that there are more on the way. So what our view is that it's government's role to make sure that there is enough food for all its people. We know that South Africa has a net surplus of food. We know that over 10 million tons of good, edible, quality food is being dumped in landfill or being incinerated. And we need government to take a leading role here to make sure that a food donations policy is enacted for South Africa. And in the meantime, that a framework around food donations policy is enacted. We have the framework in place. We are talking with various interest groups such as the Human Rights Commission, Lawyers for Human Rights, the Legal Resource Center, the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa. We are casting the net wide here so that we apply the pressure on government so that government can come to the table and assist us in making sure that the low-hanging fruit is reached so that we can make sure that our people, especially our children, 0 to 5-year-olds, are not starving double.
The food waste problem, you've mentioned it, and we've had this conversation previously on it as well. Are we making headway as far as that challenge is concerned?
I think we are. I'm very happy to say that we are. You know that ESG issues around environment, sustainability and governance is growing, and awareness is growing, and we need more and more corporates to report on ESG. And once that transparency is available, more and more corporates are realizing that their actions relating to dumping and incinerating stock is affecting climate change, and climate change is affecting those that are most vulnerable the worst. And I'm happy to say that more and more food donors are coming on board. They are being more conscious, and they're realizing that it's good business to be able to donate food and divert food instead of dumping that food. And I'm confident that with the food donations policy spreading across South Africa and people supporting our petition, that we are able to get more and more farmers, manufacturers, and wholesalers on board to make sure that surplus food is donated. I know that the Western Cape government is passing legislation of an organic waste landfill ban by the end of 2022, and while it looks like they may not reach those targets, they're far ahead of where the rest of the country is. And so we are hoping that more and more municipalities will reduce this organic waste to landfill so that more and more companies can divert that stock and say, we are now bringing food banks into the supply chain equation to make sure that we are regarded as an important stakeholder throughout the supply chain to reduce food loss and waste across South Africa. Food loss and waste is the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions across the atmosphere. And if we are able to just tick that box and say more and more will make the commitment to reduce food loss and waste, we are on the way to making sure that we have a nation that's eating, a nation that's no longer starving and dying of malnutrition and starvation, and making sure that we have a healthier nation so that when jobs are created, we have a workforce that is able to take our economy higher.
Yeah. So one would say, listening to the conversation, Andy is speaking specifically. This proposal would provide, of course, a cushion for good faith donors like themselves. But you're saying this is something that has been done elsewhere in the world, including some countries like France and Italy and the United States, yes, where they have such policies. How do they work there, and how have they improved their situation?
Yeah, so in the United States, and I've seen the food banking model across various countries in the United States, and once they've enacted a policy around surplus food donations, the amount of surplus food that was donated increased exponentially. So we are seeing thousands and thousands and thousands of tons of food now being able to be diverted because there's liability protection for food donors and there are food safety regulations. Italy has passed similar laws, France has passed similar laws, Israel has passed similar laws, Paraguay as well, and there are more and more countries coming on board realizing that the low-hanging fruit is there, and we just need the law to be able to make sure that we can unlock these food donations. So together with the Consumer Goods Council of South Africa and the Harvard Law School's Food Law Project, we conducted a survey in Consumer Goods Council of South Africa members, and 74% of their members said that if they had liability protection, they would donate food. And secondly, if there were clear guidelines around what to donate, they would donate more. So there is appetite in the market throughout the food supply chain for this to be enacted, but there's fear, and we need government to take the lead here to make sure that the food donations policy is enacted for South Africa.
Appreciate your time, Andy. Thank you very much for coming on. Managing Director for FoodForward South Africa, calling for a food donations policy, something that they have, of course, been proposing to government for a while now as a way of assisting, particularly when it comes to food inflation.